Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Soccer Podcast, Australia's #1 soccer talk show. My name's Shannon, and for this episode, we're talking how will Tottenham cope without Harry Kane? And to do so, I'm joined by Alex Smith. Alex, welcome to the Soccer Podcast. All right, so let's talk, Alex. How is Tottenham going to cope without Harry Kane?
I think they're going to have a little dip in form, but I think ultimately they'll be okay. I think Harry Kane's been a staple of the team for the past 2-3 years. Any other striker hasn't really had any game time apart from the reserves, and if Kane was carrying a little niggle or he was rested or something, so it's going to take time for whoever comes in to get up to that game speed. I think Llorente is a decent striker, and he can finish. I think over the next sort of 2-3 weeks they might struggle a little bit. They might drop a few points, but I think ultimately they're going to be okay because of the quality in behind it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they got too much quality behind that striker position with Kane. Obviously, Son, Eriksen, Lamela, Sissoko. Who else? I mean, just such a wealth of talent behind. And if you've got Llorente, he's a decent enough striker. He's obviously played at Atletico Bilbao. He's played with the Spanish national team. He's played now at Tottenham, where, he comes off the bench now and then. But he's also played at Juventus. So he's also a good player. Now, I just question, I think, is he going to be able to fill that void completely? Probably not. I think they really are losing a gem in Harry Kane. I mean, we all know what this guy brings to Tottenham. I mean, the goals in him, that finishing is just absolutely lethal, Alex. And I just don't think that someone like Llorente, even with all of his experience and his own talent, I don't think he's going to be able to bag as many goals as Kane or be that lethal in front of goals. He's a different type of player altogether. Obviously, he's a tall striker, and he can, he does have good footwork as well. But I think it's all going to come down to service. But obviously, we spoke about those players that sit behind him. That no question that they have enough quality to provide him with that service.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing for me is that Llorente has experience in the Premier League. If he was a new striker coming in, someone like Higuain, there's that little bit of doubt there. You don't really know, but he scored a goal every 2 games for Swansea, so he knows the Premier League. He knows how to score in the Premier League. It might just be a slight adjustment period to getting up to that match speed, and figuring out what all those quality players in behind him want to do, and they've also got to adjust to him where he wants the ball. He's obviously going to want it a bit higher on his head than Kane did. But no, I mean you can't replace a Kane. 120 odd goals in 170 games. I mean it's an unbelievable record. But like I said, I think they'll be okay, and I think he'll score goals. Hopefully at the right end this time.
Yeah, we hear that Kane is out for at least 1 to 2 months, so that's quite a lengthy period of time. Obviously you'd rather have Harry Kane in your team than not. But Llorente, do you think it's going to take a lot of time for those players to adjust to playing with Llorente now, or do you think he's had enough time in other competitions? I feel that they know him enough now to still be okay and still cement that third position.
Yeah, I think he's been there for 2 years now, so they'd be playing with him at training, and they'd know his qualities, and they know where he likes the ball. Again, it's always different when you go from training to a match for everyone. So I think he's just gonna just take a couple of games to get up to speed, and hopefully they can find the goals elsewhere until then, like they did the other night in stoppage time. But I think I'm fairly confident that they'll be okay.
I think so too. I think that Pochettino, he'll obviously work a lot in training on those different types of play, obviously to take into account Llorente and his qualities. Let's just talk a little bit about what Kane brings to the team and what Llorente brings. Because I just feel that Harry Kane, it's not just goals with him. I think it's also his leadership as well that they're going to be missing. I mean, they look to Harry Kane. His performances on the field speak volumes, and that just lifts the whole team. But it's off the pitch as well. But Llorente's maybe a little bit quieter. He doesn't have that leadership role. He comes off the bench. Do you think that's going to be any issue at all?
I think Tottenham's a team. They're one of the few teams in the Premier League. It's not made up of individuals. Yes, Harry Kane's a brilliant player, and yes, Eriksen's a brilliant player, and yes, Son's. But you generally speak about Tottenham. You don't often speak about the individuals. You speak about how well they play as a team. So I think Pochettino's got them very much together, and it'd just be a case of one in, one out. Business as usual. I don't think they need that leadership at this point in the season. I think they get plenty of it. They've got so many quality players anyway, starting from the back with a great keeper. Strong defensively, and it might be a chance for someone like Dele Alli to step up and take that leadership role, which I can't see him doing. However, it's a chance for someone else to come in and really do the business. So
I have heard, as well that there are reports Pochettino has been speaking in the media that he does want to bring in another striker, but I feel always have, Alex, that Tottenham, they've got such a well-balanced team. There's no question about it. You just touched on that. But up front, it's always just been Harry Kane. And we've kind of talked about it, I think, in previous shows about what happens if this Harry Kane does get injured. And now it has happened. This is kind of, all the Tottenham fans would be saying, well, why didn't we make a signing in the last transfer window? When Tottenham were the only club to not make a single signing. So I think now they maybe are paying the price a little bit for only relying so much on Harry Kane.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to how you are as a manager. I mean, I know for me personally, to have someone in your squad like a Fernando Llorente training week in, week out. He's got a proven record in England. He's been with the club for 2 years. Start of the season, he probably thought, well, if something happens to Kane, then I'm happy with Llorente. I could spend my money elsewhere on something else, or I can save it, so we can actually make a bit of money as a club this season. There's all sorts of factors that go into a manager's thoughts, and I tend to agree with them. Clubs don't have to make a signing every transfer window. And the fans, they need to understand this, that it doesn't have to happen every single transfer window. It's crazy. It's madness.
They've proved a lot of people wrong, Tottenham, in that respect, because they didn't make a single signing and they've done tremendously well. They're sitting nicely in third place. But I still think it's risky, Alex, because they're not winning anything either. Pochettino and Tottenham are not winning any silverware anywhere, and probably not anytime soon. I would think, this is just a suggestion that I would make, is that they need another world-class player to supplement what they've already got with Harry Kane, because that's going to bolster their team. Maybe, I don't know, if he wants to play one striker or two, in terms of how it would fit in with his system. But, I mean, can you imagine if they had signed another world-class striker? That would firstly go a long way in terms of challenging for the Premier League title, potentially winning something, as well as, secondly, if it does happen that Harry Kane does get injured, which he now is, you've got at least that other world-class striker to rely on. Imagine if Tottenham had got I don't know, not saying that they could get him, but maybe a Robert Lewandowski to play with Kane. I mean, then you start talking about at the start of the season maybe Tottenham challenging for the Premier League title, because they've got those two world-class strikers, and we already know how good of a team they are everywhere else in the pitch. Not to mention when Kane gets injured, you've got that world-class striker who can come in and cover him. Now they've got to look to Llorente, who for me, Alex, he's a good player, but he's not world class, and I think they're going to maybe just struggle for goals. Obviously, they've got goals in them; they can spread the goals throughout the team, but you need those strikers as well to win the Premier League. I remember, Chelsea relied on Diego Costa, 30 plus goals a season, win the Premier League. Didier Drogba, when he was at the club, 30 plus goals to win the Premier League, and they did. Those goals for one individual player spread across the whole team, chipping in here and there, it makes a big difference. So I just feel that Tottenham, they didn't necessarily need to sign anyone. They didn't, obviously, we know that. But should they have signed someone, a world-class striker, I think they'd be probably maybe higher up the table, possibly challenging for the Premier League title, which obviously all their fans want to see. And if there was an injury, if the event came that Harry Kane got injured, they've got a world-class striker who just steps in like for like.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a few things with that is that Pochettino plays a certain way, he plays a certain formation, plays with one striker. So we love Tottenham, we love watching them play, and they've gotten all the plaudits this year for the way they play and some of the football that they've played. So if you do manage to attract another world-class striker, then you've got to play with two, which completely changes the way Pochettino wants to play. Then there's an adjustment period for the first month or two during the Prem. They may not even be in the Champions League spot because of having to fit this other. I mean, if you can find me another world-class striker, and I say world-class, there's only maybe 10 of them in the world, that's going to come to Tottenham and play second fiddle to Harry Kane, then you need to go buy a lottery ticket, because I think you're going to be lucky. So Pochettino plays with one up front, and Kane's the best player on their team. So anytime any team's best player gets hurt, can you imagine if United lost De Gea? I mean, it would, they'd be falling down. They wouldn't have won the last 7 games. So it's just part of football. It's unfortunate that he's gotten hurt. And like I said, I think, these days football is a business. They didn't make any signings because they obviously had a plan, and they've gone out and done that, and they felt that they had a decent backup in Llorente, which I think he's probably about as good as you're going to get to sit on the bench, for 2 years, and bide his time and be happy where he is and still be able to deliver when he comes on. Obviously, we'll see whether or not that's the case in the next month or two, but Tottenham obviously think he can. So that's good enough for me. I think Pochettino's earned the right to have that sort of respect. So I think they'll be okay.
Valid points, but I just feel as well that maybe Pochettino would change his attitude or be willing to tinker with his formation if they were, as a club, Tottenham, able to attract that second world-class strike. I mean, obviously, it's a key factor, Alex, is we both of us, we know, we're big enough to know that how many world-class strikers are Tottenham, going to really be able to attract. I mean, there's not many of them, you said that. But I just think that if Daniel Levy, the board, gave Pochettino the funds to go out and get a world-class striker, and the world-class striker, whoever it is, was willing to come to Tottenham, there might just be a case for Pochettino to think, maybe we should play with 2 world-class strikers, because you just don't know. Until that happens, we just don't know. He hasn't obviously been the funds, or he didn't want to spend. We don't know. We're not privy to that information. But if let's say Robert Lewandowski or a Aubameyang, I know he's at Arsenal, but that kind of caliber of player was to play next to next to Kane, maybe Pochettino would change the way he plays, the team plays.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a lot of ifs. And they probably thought, well, we've got a ready-made replacement here who can just slot in, play the lone striker. He's got experience, scores goals. It's a big risk to bring someone in, and if you play with 2, then you got to take one of Ali, Sissoko, Eriksen, Son out of the team.
That's right, but I mean, they're leaving one of those players anyway on the bench. Lamela, Mora, Sissoko, Son. Not all of them play anyway. I mean, it's typically Ericsson. Lamela's been on the bench some weeks. Son's come off the bench some weeks. So you're not going to be able to play all of them anyway. Maybe it's worthwhile looking at another world-class striker. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Tottenham, let me ask you this question as well. You might change your mind, Alex, when I throw you this scenario. What would happen if Tottenham didn't sign a single player in the window, like a striker, which obviously they desperately need, in my opinion, to help out Kane? Obviously, for the reasons I already spoke about, adding goals and scoring goals and winning Premier Leagues and all that kind of thing. But what would have happened if Harry Kane had got injured early on in the season in match week 3 or 4 or 5, and he was out not for a month or 2 months, but the whole season? Then what?
Well, I mean, then Llorente would be playing. I mean, you're not going to find a world class striker that's going to come to Tottenham.
Yeah, but
you're not like it's just not going to happen, especially one that's going to play second fiddle to Kane. It's just in the world of players, it's not going to happen. They need to have a decent year like they've had this year. They need to be in the Champions League. They need to have a couple of years of consistency. These clubs would have a 5, 10, 15-year plan. Tottenham are obviously better at most than actually sticking with a manager. So he would have a plan over the next 3 years. And their target this year might be just to consolidate the Champions League spot. Make sure they qualify the Champions League this year, and then with the money they saved last year, go out next year and get a world-class striker, and then he may change it. But these coaches and managers these days, they plan so much. Everything is planned out. But fans want everything right now, and it's just not the case. It's not how football works. It's impossible. You have to give people time.
But I agree with you. You do have to give people time, and some managers get that time more than others. Obviously, Pochettino at Tottenham, he's got different expectations to maybe what Sarri has at Chelsea or Klopp at Liverpool and Mourinho at United. Obviously, there's different expectations. But I still think if you're talking just about maintaining, getting into the Champions League, and that's their objective, well, then fair enough. But still, if Harry Kane had got injured early on in the season and he's out for a lengthy period of time and they haven't signed a world-class player, who's to say that Tottenham would even make the top 4 now, knowing that there's so much, there's 6 teams vying for only 4 places? You know what I'm saying?
No, I hear you, but I mean, injuries happen. I mean, you can't plan for injuries. You take the best player out of any team, and imagine if Messi got hurt. I mean, would people be up in arms because they didn't sign another Messi? Like, how are you gonna? I just like injuries happen. It's unfortunate. Like it just is.
Yeah, but the difference is if Messi gets injured, well then you've got Osman Dembele to step in, or Luis Suarez, or that's the difference. At Tottenham it's only one world class striker. At Barcelona you've got Messi, you've got Suarez, you've got Dembele. You had Neymar a few years ago. There's a lot more depth than there is, and that's the issue for Tottenham. That's why I think they're always going to fall short in challenging for the Premier League, is because Harry Kane alone cannot carry them to the Premier League title. I think Luis Suarez is a prime example. When he was at Liverpool, I mean, remember how many goals he scored in the Premier League when they finished second, they finished runners-up. He scored at least 30 to 40 goals that season, and it still, Alex, was not enough to get them over the line for that Premier League title. But imagine if Liverpool that season had maybe a Luis Suarez in conjunction with, I don't know, another world-class striker. Those goals would add up, and possibly they could have won the Premier League.
Well, I mean, we've just got done talking about how Chelsea has won the Premier League with one striker, and heavily reliant on Drogba, Costas. Leicester won it heavily reliant on Jamie Vardy. I mean, it can be done. I mean, and it seems to always be done. I mean, United, the great United teams. I remember Van Nistelrooy. was, okay, Dwight York and Andy Cole, the 1-2 punch. But it can happen. I think they're probably to be honest, a goal scoring midfielder short. I don't think they're a striker short. I think they're a consistent high scoring midfielder. If they really want to pressure for the title, Eriksen, Son, Ali, they're great players and they're really nice to watch. But someone who consistently scores, a Frank Lampard or a Steven Gerrard or someone like that, that consistently scores 15, 20 goals a season, that's what Tottenham need.
Possibly. I mean, yeah, you said Jamie Vardy. Remember when Leicester won it, they had Vardy scoring all those goals, but they had that player just behind in Riyad Mahrez who also scored an abundance of goals. So, it is interesting. But obviously, if you're a Tottenham fan, I think you'd want another world-class striker, provided you could get one. I just think Llorente isn't that player. I think they might drop a few points now. But anyway, time will tell, Alex. Time will tell, and it's all in the moment. It depends on what the manager wants. Depends on what the club gives him in terms of spending. But time will tell if Llorente is the man to help Tottenham. But everyone, is there anything you want to add to that?
No. I think I've said enough today.
Okay, well, everyone, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We were talking how will Tottenham cope without Harry Kane. But everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram @The Soccer Podcast and smash that thumbs up button on our YouTube channel as well. Alex, thank you so much for talking to me today.
No worries, man. It's been fun.
It's been real fun, everyone. All right, well, from the Soccer Podcast, Australia's #1 soccer talk show, it's goodbye for now.